Around 300 BC, a wealthy merchant named Zeno of Citium was sailing across the Mediterranean Sea. His ship was loaded with a precious purple dye, a cargo that, represented his entire fortune. But then, disaster struck. A violent storm descended upon his vessel, smashing it against the rocks and sending his wealth sinking to the bottom of the sea. Zeno survived, washing ashore in Athens with nothing but the clothes on his back. He had lost everything he owned, an event entirely outside of his control. This catastrophic event, which would have broken most people, actually became the unlikely beginning of a philosophy that would endure for millennia and guide some of history's greatest leaders. In the bustling city of Athens, Zeno found himself adrift, not just physically, but existentially. He wandered into a bookstore and began to read about the life and teachings of Socrates, the great philosopher who had faced his own death with remarkable calm. Zeno was captivated. He realized that true wealth was not in material possessions, which could be swept away in an instant, but in the strength of one's character and the quality of one's thoughts. He sought out the teachers of Athens, studying under the most famous philosophers of his day, but he found their ideas incomplete. So, he decided to forge his own path, developing a new way of thinking designed for the real world. Zeno began teaching his philosophy not in a grand academy, but in a public space known as the Stoa Poikile, or the Painted Porch. This location was significant. It was open to everyone, regardless of their wealth or social standing. His followers became known as the Stoics, the people of the Stoa. His core message was born directly from his own experience with the shipwreck. He taught that we cannot control what happens to us in life, the storms, the losses, the actions of others. However, we have absolute control over one thing: our response to those events. This simple yet profound insight would become the foundation of Stoicism. From these humble beginnings on a public porch, Stoicism grew into a powerful and practical philosophy for living a good life. It provided a framework for navigating the chaos and uncertainty of the human experience with tranquility and purpose. Zeno's personal tragedy was transformed into a universal lesson. It taught that external events do not have the power to harm us. Only our judgment of those events can. This idea, that our inner world is our fortress, was a radical departure from the prevailing beliefs of the time. It empowered individuals by shifting their focus from the unpredictable world outside to the unshakable citadel within their own minds. Stoicism's enduring power is showcased by the diverse individuals who embraced it. The philosophy was not confined to dusty scrolls or academic debates. It was a lived practice for people from every walk of life. Perhaps the most striking examples are three of its most famous proponents: a Roman emperor, a former slave, and a powerful statesman and playwright. Their lives were vastly different, yet each found in Stoicism the tools to navigate their unique challenges. This demonstrates the universal applicability of Stoic principles, proving that virtue and tranquility are accessible to anyone, regardless of their station in life, from the most powerful man in the world to someone who was once considered property. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, was arguably the most powerful man on earth. His reign was marked by constant warfare, political intrigue, and a devastating plague. Each day, he faced immense pressure and responsibility. To cope, he turned to Stoicism, not as an abstract theory but as a personal guide. He kept a private journal, now known as Meditations, where he wrote down Stoic reminders to himself. He reminded himself to be just, to be patient, to focus on what he could control, and to meet the demands of his role with courage and integrity. His writings offer an intimate glimpse into the mind of a leader using philosophy to remain steady amidst chaos. On the opposite end of the social spectrum was Epictetus. Born a slave in the Roman Empire, he endured immense hardship, including a permanently lamed leg inflicted by a cruel master. Yet, Epictetus became one of the most influential Stoic teachers of all time. After gaining his freedom, he established a school where he taught that our minds are the only thing that are truly free. He argued that no one could harm our inner self unless we allowed them to. His teachings, transcribed by his student Arian in the Discourses and the Enchiridion, or Handbook, are direct, practical, and powerful, emphasizing that our freedom lies in our choices, not our circumstances. Between these two extremes was Seneca the Younger, one of Rome's wealthiest men, a renowned playwright, and a senior advisor to the notorious Emperor Nero. Seneca's life was a tightrope walk of power, wealth, and immense danger. He constantly navigated the treacherous political landscape of Nero's court, and he ultimately was forced to take his own life by the very emperor he served. Throughout his turbulent career, he wrote extensively about Stoicism in his letters and essays. He explored themes of managing anger, dealing with grief, and the shortness of life, offering practical advice that remains incredibly relevant today. His life and work show that Stoicism is not just for emperors or slaves, but for anyone trying to live a virtuous life in a complicated world. At the very heart of Stoicism lies a simple but life-altering principle known as the Dichotomy of Control. This is the practice of clearly distinguishing between what is within our power and what is not. The Stoics believe that the root of most of our frustration, anxiety, and suffering comes from confusing these two categories. We waste our energy trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable, like the weather, the economy, what other people think of us, or the outcome of our efforts. This is, honestly, a recipe for disappointment and misery. The key to a tranquil and effective life, they argued, is to focus all our attention and energy exclusively on the things we can actually control. So, what can we control? According to the Stoics, the list is quite short but incredibly powerful. We control our thoughts, our judgments, our choices, our actions, and our reactions. Our inner world, our mindset, and our character is our sovereign domain. No external event or person can force us to think something we don't want to think or to act against our will. While others can influence our circumstances, our response is always up to us. This is where our true power lies. By focusing on our own efforts and intentions, we can find a sense of stability and self-worth that is independent of external validation or success. Conversely, almost everything else falls into the category of things we cannot control. This includes our health, our wealth, our reputation, and the actions of others. We can influence these things, of course. We can eat well and exercise to improve our health, work hard to earn money, and act honorably to build a good reputation. But we cannot command the outcome. A sudden illness can strike, a market can crash, and a rumor can tarnish our name despite our best efforts. The Stoic does not ignore these things. Rather, they accept them as externals and treat them with a degree of detachment, understanding that their happiness and virtue do not depend on them. This principle is not about passivity or resignation. It is a strategic framework for action. It directs us to pour our energy where it will have the most impact on our own choices and behavior. Imagine a Stoic archer. She can control how she trains, how she maintains her bow, how carefully she aims, and the moment she releases the arrow. But once the arrow is in flight, she cannot control a sudden gust of wind that might push it off course. The Stoic archer judges her success not on whether she hits the target, but on the quality of her execution. She did her part perfectly. The rest is up to fate, and she accepts that calmly. For the Stoics, the ultimate goal of life was to live in accordance with nature, which meant living a life of virtue. They believed that a good life was not a life of pleasure, wealth, or fame, but a life of excellent character. To guide their actions and decisions, they identified 4 cardinal virtues that served as the pillars of a well-lived life. These virtues were not abstract ideals, but practical guides for daily behavior, applicable in every situation one might face. They are wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. For a Stoic, practicing these virtues was the only true good, and failing to do so was the only true evil. Everything else was indifferent. The first virtue is wisdom. In the Stoic sense, wisdom is not about knowing a lot of facts or being intellectually brilliant. It is the practical knowledge of what is good, what is bad, and what is indifferent. It is the ability to navigate complex situations logically and calmly. Most importantly, it is the ability to understand and apply the dichotomy of control, to know the difference between what we can and cannot change. Wisdom allows us to see the world clearly, to make sound judgments, and to choose our responses deliberately rather than reacting emotionally. It is the master virtue that guides all the others, ensuring we act with clarity and purpose. The second virtue is courage. Stoic courage is not just about physical bravery in the face of danger, although it includes that. It is also about moral and mental fortitude. It is the strength to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult or unpopular. It is the resilience to endure hardship, pain, and misfortune without complaint or despair. The Stoic philosopher Seneca summarized it as the ability to persist and resist, to persist in doing the right thing and to resist the temptations of fear, comfort, and peer pressure. It is the courage to face reality as it is, not as we wish it were. The third virtue is temperance, or moderation. This virtue is about self-control, discipline, and balance in all aspects of life. It's the ability to master our desires and appetites, rather than being ruled by them. This doesn't mean a Stoic must live a life of harsh asceticism, but rather that they should desire what is essential and sufficient, not what is excessive. Temperance applies to food, drink, money, and pleasure, but also to our emotions. It's about avoiding extremes and finding a healthy middle ground. By practicing temperance, we free ourselves from the slavery of chasing fleeting pleasures and can focus on what truly matters. Finally, there is justice, which the Stoics considered the most important virtue. Stoic justice is about treating others with fairness, kindness, and respect. It stems from the understanding that all human beings are part of a single, interconnected community. The Stoics coined the term cosmopolitan, meaning citizen of the world, to express this idea. They believed we were born for each other and have a duty to work together for the common good. Justice means acting with integrity, honesty, and goodwill toward our fellow humans. It is the application of the other three virtues in our relationships with others, ensuring our wisdom, courage, and temperance serve a social good. Section 5. Beyond the stiff upper lip. Emotions in Stoicism. One of the most persistent modern misunderstandings of Stoicism is the idea that to be Stoic means to be emotionless, to suppress all feelings and maintain a cold, detached exterior. This caricature of a Stoic as someone with a stiff upper lip, who never shows sadness or joy, is fundamentally incorrect. You see, the ancient Stoics were not robots, nor did they aspire to be. They experienced the full range of human emotions, just like anyone else. Their goal was not to eliminate emotions, but to understand them, to manage them, and to prevent them from controlling their lives and leading them to irrational actions. The Stoics made a crucial distinction between initial, involuntary emotional reactions and a full-blown consuming passion. They called the first gauste, or first movements. These are the natural reflexive flashes of feeling that we can't control. The jolt of fear when a car swerves toward you, the flush of anger when you are insulted, or the pang of grief when you hear sad news. The Stoics recognize that these initial reactions are part of our human nature. They are not good or bad, they just are. A Stoic does not try to suppress this initial feeling, as that would be impossible and unnatural. The real work of Stoicism begins in the moment after that initial reaction. The goal is to pause, to reflect, and to use our reason to assess the situation before the initial feeling can escalate into what the Stoics called a passion. A passion is an unhealthy, irrational emotion based on a false judgment. For example, the initial flash of anger at an insult is natural, but allowing that anger to fester into a burning rage, based on the judgment that the insult has truly harmed you, is a passion. The Stoic uses reason to challenge this judgment, reminding themselves that another person's words cannot harm their character. So Stoicism is not about suppression but about transformation. It is a process of acknowledging an emotion, examining the judgment that caused it, and then deciding whether that judgment is true and helpful. The Stoics sought to cultivate healthy emotions like joy, goodwill, and tranquility, which are based on rational judgments. They aim to avoid destructive emotions like rage, terror, and deep-seated envy, which are based on false beliefs about what is good and bad. It is a proactive, mindful approach to our emotional lives, designed to lead not to an absence of feeling, but to a state of profound and unshakable inner peace. Section 6. Training for hardship. 2 Stoic Exercises. Stoicism is not just a philosophy to be read, it is a philosophy to be practiced. The ancient Stoics developed a series of practical exercises, or spiritual disciplines designed to build mental and emotional resilience. These were like workouts for the mind, intended to prepare them for the challenges of life before those challenges actually occurred. Just as an athlete trains their body to be strong and flexible, a Stoic trains their mind to be calm and resilient. 2 of the most powerful and accessible of these exercises are voluntary discomfort and negative visualization. These practices help us appreciate what we have and prepare us for potential loss. Voluntary discomfort is the practice of intentionally choosing to experience a minor, temporary hardship. This could be something as simple as taking a cold shower, sleeping on the floor for a night, fasting for a day, or leaving your comfortable jacket at home on a chilly day. The purpose of this exercise is twofold. First, it helps you build resilience by proving to yourself that you can endure discomfort. When you face real, unavoidable hardship in the future, your mind will be prepared, knowing that you have faced difficulty before and survived. You learn that discomfort is not as terrible as your mind often makes it out to be. The second purpose of voluntary discomfort is to cultivate gratitude. After spending a night on a hard floor, your bed feels incredibly luxurious. After fasting for a day, a simple meal tastes like a feast. By temporarily removing the comforts we take for granted, we learn to appreciate them more deeply. Seneca recommended this practice, suggesting we set aside a few days each month to live on the barest of means. This, he said, is not a punishment, but a defense against the fear of poverty. It answers the question, is this what I was so afraid of, and shows us that we are stronger than we think. The second key practice is negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This involves regularly taking a few moments to imagine that the things you value most have been taken from you. You might visualize losing your job, your health, your possessions, or even your loved ones. This sounds morbid, but its purpose is not to cause anxiety. Instead, it has two benefits. First, it prepares you for the inevitable reality of loss. Life is impermanent, and misfortune can strike at any time. By mentally rehearsing for the worst, you soften the blow, if and when it actually happens, reducing shock and panic. More importantly, negative visualization serves to make you cherish what you have right now. When you take a moment to imagine that your family is gone, you embrace them with more love when you see them. When you consider the possibility of losing your home, you feel a deeper sense of gratitude for the roof over your head today. It is a powerful antidote to taking things for granted. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus advised that when you kiss your child goodnight, you should quietly remind yourself that they are mortal and may not be there tomorrow. This is not to be grim, but to love them more fully in the present moment. Section 7. Modern Stoicism in Action. The example of Nelson Mandela. The principles of Stoicism are not confined to the ancient world. Their timeless wisdom continues to provide strength to individuals facing unimaginable adversity. There is perhaps no better modern example of a leader embodying Stoic ideals than Nelson Mandela. During his 27-year imprisonment for fighting against the brutal system of apartheid in South Africa, Mandela faced conditions that would have broken almost anyone. He was subjected to forced labor, isolation, and constant degradation. Yet, within the confines of his prison cell on Robben Island, he forged a character of immense strength, dignity, and wisdom, drawing on principles that resonate deeply with Stoic philosophy. Inside prison, Mandela had almost no control over his external circumstances. He could not control the guards, the harsh policies, or the length of his sentence. Applying the dichotomy of control, he focused his energy entirely on what he could control: his own mind, his education, his attitude, and his response to his captors. Instead of succumbing to hatred and despair, he chose to study, to learn the language and culture of his Afrikaner jailers, and to treat them with respect. He understood that his mind was a fortress that no one could conquer unless he allowed it. He refused to let his spirit be imprisoned along with his body. One of the most powerful tools Mandela used was a book of the collected works of William Shakespeare, which was smuggled into the prison. The prisoners would secretly pass it around, and each would sign their name next to their favorite passage. Mandela chose a line from the play Julius Caesar: "Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once." This reflects the Stoic virtue of courage, the choice to face hardship with fortitude rather than fear. Mandela also famously read the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, finding a kindred spirit in a man who, 2,000 years earlier, had also sought to maintain his virtue and inner peace amidst chaos. Upon his release from prison and his subsequent election as president of South Africa, Mandela faced his greatest test. The nation was on the brink of a civil war, filled with anger and a desire for revenge. Instead of retribution, Mandela chose the path of justice and reconciliation, embodying the most important Stoic virtue. He urged his people to accept that the past was beyond their control, and to focus their efforts on building a new, unified nation together. He chose forgiveness over vengeance, unity over division. Nelson Mandela's life is a powerful testament to the fact that Stoic principles are not just ancient ideas, but a practical, living philosophy for mastering life's greatest challenges. Section 8. The ancient roots of modern psychology. While Stoicism is an ancient philosophy, its core insights into the human mind are so profound that they have become cornerstones of modern psychological therapies. Many of the techniques used by therapists today to help people overcome anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges can be traced directly back to the ideas formulated on the painted porch in Athens over 2 millennia ago. This demonstrates that the Stoics were not just philosophers. They were practical psychologists who developed a sophisticated understanding of how our thoughts shape our emotional reality. Their ancient wisdom provides the foundation for some of today's most effective therapeutic approaches. One of the most prominent examples is rational emotive behavior therapy, developed by psychologist Albert Ellis in the 1950s. Ellis was heavily influenced by the Stoics, often quoting Epictetus, who said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." This is the central premise of REBT. The therapy helps patients understand that their emotional distress is not caused directly by external events, but by the irrational beliefs they hold about those events. The therapist works with the patient to identify, challenge, and replace these self-defeating beliefs with more rational and healthier ones, a process that is almost identical to the Stoic practice of examining and correcting one's judgments. Another major therapeutic school with Stoic roots is logotherapy, founded by the neurologist and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl. Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, developed his theories after enduring the horrors of Nazi concentration camps. He observed that the prisoners who were most likely to survive were not necessarily the physically strongest, but those who had a sense of purpose, a reason to live. His core idea, that the primary human drive is not pleasure but the pursuit of meaning, is deeply Stoic. The Stoics believed that living a life of virtue and purpose was the ultimate goal, and that this could bring tranquility even in the darkest of situations, a truth Frankl witnessed firsthand. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most widely practiced and evidence-based forms of psychotherapy today, also owes a significant debt to Stoicism. CBT operates on the principle that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are interconnected, and that by changing our negative thought patterns, we can change our feelings and actions for the better. This is precisely what the Stoics taught. The practice of journaling one's thoughts, identifying cognitive distortions, and reframing negative thinking are all modern versions of ancient Stoic exercises. It shows that the Stoic quest to master one's inner world is not just a philosophical pursuit, but a clinically proven path to greater mental well-being. Section 9. Finding peace and purpose in an unpredictable world. In our modern world, we are bombarded with constant change, uncertainty, and an overwhelming amount of information. We face pressure to succeed, to accumulate more, and to present a perfect version of ourselves to the world. It is easy to feel anxious, overwhelmed, and powerless in the face of such relentless demands. The ancient wisdom of Stoicism offers a timeless and deeply practical antidote to the chaos of contemporary life. It provides a solid foundation, an inner citadel, from which we can navigate challenges with grace, resilience, and a profound sense of peace. It is not a philosophy for a bygone era, but a crucial operating system for thriving today. By embracing the dichotomy of control, we can free ourselves from a tremendous amount of stress and frustration. When we learn to distinguish between what we can change and what we cannot, we stop wasting precious energy on futile battles. We no longer tie our happiness to external outcomes, like getting a promotion, receiving praise, or avoiding traffic. Instead, we find our contentment in our own efforts and our own character. This shift in perspective is liberating. It allows us to act with purpose and integrity, to do our best in every situation, and to calmly accept the results, whatever they may be, knowing we have done everything within our power. Living by the 4 virtues of wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice provides a clear and reliable moral compass. In a world where values can often seem relative or confusing, these 4 pillars offer a straightforward guide to living a good life. They challenge us to think clearly, to act bravely, to live moderately, and to treat others fairly. By striving to embody these virtues in our daily actions, at work, at home, and in our communities, We give our lives a deep and abiding sense of purpose. We become better parents, better colleagues, better friends, and better citizens, contributing to the common good in our own unique way. Ultimately, Stoicism teaches us that a good life is not something to be found, but something to be built. It is constructed day by day, choice by choice, through the conscious practice of virtue and the mastery of our inner world. It gives us the tools to face adversity not as a catastrophe, but as an opportunity to practice courage and resilience. It shows us how to find tranquility not by changing the world around us, but by changing our relationship to it. By adopting a Stoic mindset, anyone can learn to live with greater peace, purpose, and an unshakable strength that comes from within.